Alright guys, welcome. This is the way we're going to be doing our lessons, I think, from now on. Hopefully it goes okay for you. So our unit 3 is going to be gases in the atmosphere. Basically, the atmosphere is the mass of air surrounding the Earth. So we tend not to think of air as having a mass or the atmosphere having a mass, but it does, and it pushes down all around us. If we were together, I would vacuum pack you, and some of you have probably seen that on people's, I know people tend to snap it and stuff like that, on their social media, that you would see we'd stick you in a garbage bag and suck out all the air, and you could feel the weight of the atmosphere. That would actually be a really good experiment to do at home. So if you have a vacuum cleaner and you have a big plastic bag, put yourself inside of it and get someone to help you suck the air out. Just not your head, right? Keep your head out. It's pretty cool how heavy the atmosphere is. Okay, so today's lesson, we're just going to go through and learn some sort of historical stuff about the atmosphere here. So today's composition of the atmosphere. So as you can see, 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. So this is not really intuitive. When you ask people what is air mostly made of, people will largely say oxygen, even though it's clearly nitrogen. So oxygen only accounts for 21%, and then of course water vapor up to 2%, and then under 1% we've got the carbon dioxide, argon, and some other gases there. Now, has the composition of the atmosphere of the Earth changed over time? Yes, the atmosphere has evolved over time, just like everything else. Oh, you know what? One thing, sorry, I forgot to mention. In terms of taking notes, you should be taking notes on here. So I would probably get you, I'll just show you. Look at that, I have this fancy little pen. I would write down the atmosphere definition here. From this, I would write down the different percentages. Remember, it's going to be N2 and O2, Hofbrinkel. Those are both diatomic molecules. So write down the percentages. So what is this? 78, 21, and then know the rest are the water vapor, and then the CO2, argon, etc. Then, okay, so has the composition of the atmosphere of the Earth changed over time? So yeah, it has. The atmosphere has evolved over time, just like everything else. And here I would get you to write down the 4 different eras that we have. So we had origin, then we went into the chemical era, the microbial era, and then the biological era. And we are in the biological era right now. So this is the one we're going to focus on because this is where we are. Now, the biological era. So don't write all this down. You don't need it. I'll highlight the things that I want you to write down here. So the biological era, the atmosphere has not always been as it is today. So it's really important to know that it has changed over time and it will change again in the future. It is closely controlled by life and in turn controls life processes. So everything is connected. Everything has an effect on each other. Oxygen was built up slowly over time, first oxidizing materials in the oceans and then on land. And that's what I want you to write down from this, okay? Now, sometime just before the Cambrian era, atmospheric oxygen reached levels close enough to today's to allow for the rapid evolution of the higher life forms. So this is when we start to get the fun dinosaurs and stuff. And right now I would ask you all who as a child was into dinosaurs, and there's probably at least 25 to 50% of you are going to raise your hands because dinosaurs are pretty darn cool. Now, before we start, we'll talk about those in a minute. Let's talk about these first, actually. No, sorry, I changed my mind. Okay, so before we start talking about the different eras, we're going to talk about extinctions. So, what's an extinction, first of all? Yeah, so an extinction is when, I think it's up to 70% of the species in a certain area of the planet, an ecosystem, whatever, will go extinct. So there, depending on who you ask, there's between 5 or 6 different mass extinctions on Earth to date. Some scientists believe we are currently living through the beginning of our own extinction, which is fairly horrifying to think of, and maybe a little too timely given our current situation now. Is COVID-19 part of an extinction? No, it's not. But it's making people a little paranoid, right? So when we talk about what some scientists here believe we are currently living through the beginning of an extinction, so what do we mean by that? Yeah, so this would probably be sort of environmental. So this would be environmental issues. So, people always talk about how we're killing the environment. We're hurting the environment, and that's not true. You have to sort of shift your thinking. We're not killing the environment. The environment's always going to be there. What we're doing is we're making it so that it's inhospitable for humans, that it cannot support human life forms anymore. So when we don't take environmental action, we're really just hurting ourselves. We're making it so that humans are not going to be able to live on this planet any longer. So that's what scientists are talking about when they say we're currently living through the beginning of an extinction. And afterwards, I'm going to post some links. There's 3 YouTube videos that I want you to watch in correlation with this lesson, and I'll post those links as well later. That one actually is from ASAP Science. It's a good one. Okay, so we've got the different eras. So we've got the Jurassic. This is when we have our Jurassic World, our Jurassic Park, right? We've got all the different eras here. So the Cambrian era was where you don't have to copy this down, by the way. But the Cambrian era was first when we started seeing higher levels of oxygen. So this is where we could start developing higher life forms. As we go through here, so we've got the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and then the Cenozoic. So those are different, just to give you an indication of all the different eras that have existed on our planet. Okay, again, do not write this all down. Sources of oxygen. So basically, where does that oxygen come from? We needed the oxygen to support the higher life forms. So looking at our sources of oxygen is liberated as a byproduct of photosynthetic chemical reactions. So if you remember, this you would have learned in grade 10, right? So you would have seen your photosynthesis reaction, you would have learned it from there. So that's where we get oxygen from. That's why our plant life is so important to us, right? The plants will take carbon dioxide, and through the process of photosynthesis will release oxygen, which we need. Oxygen occurs in the atmosphere when water molecules are split. So basically we can have H2O. If it splits with UV radiation, we end up with this here. Now, this is called photolysis. Now, of course, this looks really weird, right? Oxygen by itself, because we know that oxygen will not stay like that. As soon as an oxygen molecule is released like this, or liberated, it will immediately hook up with another oxygen. So this is where we get our O2 gas and our O3. And so what is O3? Yeah, some of you know it. That is our ozone, right? And the ozone layer, so we need that. That's part of regulating the temperature on Earth. What do I want to say? Yeah, I'm going to skip that next part. You can read that part if you want, but you don't need to know it. Okay, ozone. Proved to be important in filtering out the high damaging levels of radiation from the sun. So this also has led to the development of more complex species. So ozone is our O3 here, and that's just an image of what it would look like with the 3 oxygen molecules bonded together. Now, okay, I'm just going to take this away. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this graph here. So this is carbon dioxide levels over time. So as you can see, bring my pen back. We've got year here. Now, other than the first 2, those have a large gap between them. But after that, they go up every 5 years, correct? Now, if you look at the carbon dioxide concentration, what is happening to the CO2 concentration as we go through time? Yeah, it's increasing. So we look, carbon dioxide concentration is increasing, and we look at ppmv, that's just parts per million for volume. So it's just a unit of concentration there. Temperature anomaly. Anomaly might be a word that you're not familiar with. So what it means is just something that's not normal. So an anomaly is something that's just not normal, and this one is specific to temperature. So this is what is happening to the temperature in terms of how far off is it from normal. So we look here, and what do we notice about the temperature over time? Yeah, it is also increasing. So at this point, if we were in class, I would ask you, what can you glean, what can you figure out just from this chart, just from this information? And some of you would write things down, like you would say, carbon dioxide concentration is increasing. No, sorry. You would say the temperature of the Earth is increasing, so global warming. So this would be our global warming here. Global warming is happening because CO2 concentration is increasing over time. Like that's one thing people would say. However, the point of this particular assignment here is that, like, we know that's true. We know that as carbon dioxide concentrations have increased, scientists have said, as that is happening, that is causing the temperature to increase. However, just looking at this particular set of data, we can't actually say that. Because looking at this, all we can say that as CO2 increases, temperature increases. So we don't actually know for sure, just looking at this set of data, that one causes the other. And it's important to make a difference between those two things. So this is where, hold on, we would talk about science literacy. So in terms of literacy would be, how well you read if you were in an English class. Science literacy is a little different. It means that a person can ask, find, or determine answers to questions derived from curiosity about everyday experiences. So, and I'll let you read through this at your leisure. So scientific literacy is really the goal of every science class. We're not all going to be scientists, but we want to make sure that people have an understanding of science, so that they can make informed decisions, they can be intelligent consumers, they can vote properly, all kinds of things. It's really, really important, and that truly is our goal as in terms of education, what people need to learn from science. So right now we would watch a video, and again I'll link to it. It's a very inspiring video, Neil deGrasse Tyson, with really inspiring music in it, and I really like it. It really talks about sort of the joy of science, and I know that maybe doesn't come across in a high school chemistry class sometimes, because we do get bogged down by facts, because you have to know a lot of stuff, right? But I really want you to watch that video and take a look at it. The main point is here, the goal is not for everyone to be a scientist. That would be a really boring world. We don't want that. But we need you to be scientifically literate so that you can be informed. You are all going to be voters soon. It matters. And again, this is kind of a timely thing. Just think about it right now. You've got, I don't know if you guys have been watching, but Dr. Tan, do you know who she is? So she's the Chief Medical Officer in Canada. When we first started this whole thing on COVID-19, they said, no masks. You don't need masks. It's not airborne, right? Now, as the science has changed, and by science changing, I just mean as more research has come out, there is more of a possibility that when someone's breathing, some of you would have seen Trudeau talk about this when you're speaking moistly, that people kind of spit a little bit when they talk. So to prevent that, wearing a mask will stop them from spreading germs. And so Dr. Tan, her first message, a month ago was, no, you don't need masks. But now she's changed and said, yeah, you know what, they are kind of recommended because you can stop the spread of something. And so say you're asymptomatic, right? Now some people are taking this to believe that you can't trust Dr. Tan. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Now, that is not true. The process of science is such that you build on information, you learn things, you work together. So at the time, this was the correct information, to have no masks. As more data has come out, more information has come out, this one is now correct. And the beautiful thing about science is that that's okay. We change things, we learn from each other. Scientists will work together, and that's a really beautiful thing. So that's one area where, science literacy matters. And there's articles in the media, there's, people are making it political, saying that, the liberals don't know what they're talking about. And it's kind of ridiculous because that's just not how science works. Now, we're going to go through a series of things that are not real science. So this is not true science at all. So this is a detox that you can take. So this is you can cleanse your body and detox your body by taking these conveniently packaged tablets. Now, is this true? Does this work? Can you cleanse your body by taking a pill? No, you cannot. What is the only thing in your body that can cleanse your body? Yes, your liver, and everybody's got a liver. So your liver is what cleanses and detoxes your body. This will not help at all. It's a scam. Don't pay money for that. Now, another one, smokers cleanse here. So this part, you can smoke for years, but in 30 days, you can completely detox your lungs. Is this true? No. Now, can lungs heal themselves after smoking? Yes, they can, but it takes a lot longer than 30 days. And your body will naturally do that. Your body will naturally process. So that's another one to watch out for. This one is my particular favorite. This is where we have oxygen water. So this is where when these bottles of water, and this is just water here, when it's been packaged, they probably packaged it under pressure, right? And forced some oxygen to be dissolved in there. That's true. But you've got a bottle, right? So what happens as soon as you open that bottle? So this is our liquid here. As soon as you open that bottle, so as soon as you take the lid off, the pressure inside here is going to go down, which means the oxygen gas that is dissolved in here is going to leave the bottle. So what did you just pay for? Just regular water, except you probably paid a high premium for that. So this one is completely false. This one's a big pet peeve of mine, and I know some of you probably use this terminology, so I would like you to stop if you could. Clean eating. So just this phrase in itself is just really incorrect. It's what we would be calling a misnomer. So clean eating. So what's the opposite of clean eating? Yeah, dirty eating. Do you eat dirty? I don't think I do. I'm not sure I'm eating dirt. I'm just not eating clean. So what they mean by clean eating, typically this is getting rid of like processed foods and stuff like that. I don't know, there's a whole thing. But this name in itself is not promoting scientific literacy. And so I find it really offensive. So just maybe stop using that term if you have been using it. GMOs. People think GMOs are terrible. They're not, not at all. Genetically modified organisms. So what this means is just that a scientist has been involved cross-pollinating things. Now, scientists have been cross-pollinating things forever. Well, people have forever. That's not an uncommon thing. So if you look at the information here, so this is Cheerios, that's a non-GMO. This is fortified with GMOs. So looking at these, if you check out all the data here, the fortified with GMOs ends up being far healthier than the one that has non-GMOs. So, which one are you going to choose? I'd take the GMO one myself. Neil deGrasse Tyson, we are creating and modifying the biology of the world to serve our needs. I don't have a problem with that because we've been doing that for tens of thousands of years, so chill out. Very true. Climate change deniers, another favorite. So, I like this little comment. So, the world is burning. It's a very dramatic comic. Whatever. The main thing is during a continent-wide fire-nado storm, what we need most is lower taxes and less regulation. Yeah, so in my opinion, people are kind of losing the sight of things. If we don't have clean air to breathe, the rest of it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're going to talk about gluten here. So should you eat gluten? So right now we would take a survey of the class who thinks gluten is bad, and most of you would say, yeah, it's not good for you. And then I would ask you, what is gluten? And almost nobody would be able to answer that question. Now, is gluten bad? Most of you would say yes. It is not bad for you. Does anyone know what it is? What it is, it's a substance present in cereal grains, especially wheat, that's responsible for the elastic texture of dough. So breads will have, it's just a protein. It will have glutens in it. And it causes the bonds to kind of mix and weave together, and it allows the carbon dioxide gases to be caught in there so that we get a nice rising flour, nice rising bread. Now, if you have celiac disease, is gluten bad? Yes, it is very bad for you. It can make you very, very ill. If you do not have celiac disease, is gluten bad? No, it's completely fine, okay? So again, just make sure you know what you're talking about, right? This one's always one of my favorite ones too. So this is autism and vaccines. Some of you have heard about this, that vaccinations cause autism, and this is data here. So what this is, the yellow graph is showing, the purple line is showing the amount of vaccines that people are getting, okay? So the different types of vaccines and amounts. And so you can see that through the years, the vaccine rate is increasing. Now the yellow are cases of autism, right? So autism cases over time are also increasing. So some people looked at this and they were like, well, clearly the vaccine causes the autism. However, I will present you with this graph here. So this is in purple. This is again the rates of autism, and as we can see, the autism is going up. But then I've also plotted against that the number of Starbucks locations that exist. So if we look at that, Starbucks is also increasing. So what actually caused the autism must be the Starbucks. So this is really just trying to, in a maybe funny way, show you how two things can be related to each other. It doesn't mean that one causes the other. Hold on. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. So it doesn't mean one causes the other. Now, why are vaccines important? Well, we're seeing this right now. We are desperate to have a vaccine for COVID-19. We need a vaccine so that we can get back to life as normal. And when you have a vaccine, you end up getting herd immunity. And again, I'll post this video for you guys to watch later. So for one of the it sort of leads into a biological ethics question. So should children be allowed to go to school if they're not immunized? It's a really interesting question. You know, everyone can have a different opinion on this. There's no right or wrong answer. So biological ethics, it's a real gray area, right? People will fall on different sides of things. So should children be allowed to go to school if they're not immunized? So in certain countries you can't, like Australia, if you don't immunize your children, you can't, a kid cannot access the public school system. Yeah, whole bunch of stuff there. If we were in class, we would talk about, you know, can we clone human cells? Instinctively, we tend to think no. But if your, parent was dying of heart disease, and if you could clone a cell and grow them a new heart, would you do it? then a lot of us would change our mind and say yes, right? So there's a lot of factors to consider there. Biological ethics is a really interesting area. I think there's whole classes on it in university. Okay, so the main idea here with this is I do want you to make sure you understand the correlation does not equal causation. So correlation is when things are related to each other. Causation is that one caused the other one. So just because two things are related, it doesn't mean they cause that it causes one thing. Because remember, if we had increased Starbucks, increased autism, those two things, so this is our autism and our Starbucks, those two things are correlated, but they are not linked by causation. So it's important to remember that. Okay, the problem in society is not kids not knowing science. The problem is adults not knowing science. They outnumber kids 5-1. They wield power. They write legislation. When you have scientifically illiterate adults, you have undermined the very fabric of what makes a nation wealthy and strong. And it's so true. That's why it's so important to educate yourself and make sure you know what you're talking about. Okay, this is our assignment. So the carbon dioxide assignment here. So you're going to take this data. So this was the data from the previous slide, and I'll also post that on the website. You're going to graph that data. So you're going to first describe what information you can interpret from the graph. Remember, don't talk about causation at that point. Then number 2, why are levels of carbon dioxide increasing? So this one I want you to do a little bit of research for. So look into it, research that. How is this increase leading to climate change? Again, you're going to research this one, and this one you will mention greenhouse gases at that point. Number 4, do you think carbon dioxide levels will stop increasing? This is your opinion. This is actually kind of interesting because some of you will have seen on social media, pictures of places where, the pollution is so much less right now because people aren't driving. So anyways, it's really cool to see. And then part 5 here, I want you to extrapolate the data to 2020. So I think the last date that data gives you is 2000. So what you're going to do is you're going to extend the line to 2020 on the graph. And then you're going to predict what our current CO2 concentration is based on that graph. Now, one thing about this graph, now this is the year here, and then you've got concentration of carbon dioxide. This is our CO2 here. And this is our temperature anomaly here. So you've got your x-axis is going to be the year. But you've got completely different scales for the temperature and for the temperature. So when that happens, sometimes it makes sense to have a double axis, okay? So you're going to put one on one side. So let's say you put carbon dioxide here, temperature here. Choose appropriate scales. Don't forget to have a title. Now, the year, you're going to start it at 1840, but then everything after 1840 goes up by 5 years. Now, you don't want to have it so that you've got one data point here and then the rest of them here. That would not make sense. That is not a good graph, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to evenly distribute them out for the 5 years, because they're all 5 years except for that one. And then you're going to have what's called a break in data. And some of you will have seen this before. And what it looks like, it's a little squiggle, basically. So in your graph, you're going to have a break in data there. And then you're going to be, this is a connecting the dot graph, okay? So you're going to find it that way. Now your first break in data, you'd put the little squiggle line on the line graph as well for that. So this is how you're going to graph it. Now, if you don't have graph paper, you can, and if you have a printer, you can print graph paper. Just Google free graph paper. If you don't have that, you're gonna just have to do it on loose leaf and do your best, okay? And you won't lose any marks for that, of course. So you are going to create the graph, and then you're going to answer the questions here. So questions 1 to 5, you can write those, type them, whatever you'd like, and then you can submit them on Schoology. Okay, I will post more information about this, of course, but this is the data. Okay, thanks, guys.